Hello, everybody. Welcome to Clef Investments. If you like my channel, please subscribe to not miss future content. So we have talked about the box spread in the last several sessions. This time, let's compare box with a common strategy called buy, borrow, die. So buy, borrow, die means you buy stock, hold it until you die, and never sell to save tax. And then when you need money, you borrow against it. But once you borrow money using stock-backed loan, it will generate some risk because when you borrow, you increase your leverage, and high leverage may lead to forced liquidation if the stock market drops significantly. So how to reduce this risk? There could be several ways. One is you don't borrow more than you can immediately return. For example, you could have a HELOC, which has higher interest rate that you don't want to borrow when you don't need it. But you can borrow against your stock, get lower interest. If stock market drops a lot, you can borrow from your HELOC and put it into your stock market so that you no longer have loan in the stock, and therefore you don't get forced liquidation in your stock. But this limits how much you can borrow. Another way is maybe you borrowed money at some time, but later you slowly pay back your stock-backed loan with dividend so that the leverage can be reduced gradually. And the next method I want to introduce to you is called buy and box. So this is a method I could never find anywhere in the internet. And I'm using it now, and I want to tell you more about buy and box. So with buy and box, you don't need to pay any capital gain tax. And it can also reduce risk compared to buy, borrow, die. So what is buy and box? So basically, you still buy and hold stock index for the long term so that you can get the same kind of market gain as the stock market. And then when you need money, you can use the short box spreads that I talked about in the last several sessions to borrow money. And when you borrow money using box, the interest you paid becomes capital loss. Because now you have capital loss, you can sell some of your stock index. Well, how much to sell? You sell exactly the same amount so that it generates the same kind of capital gain as your capital loss. So this means capital gain and capital loss cancel with each other, so you get zero capital gain tax. And if you look at the buy, borrow, die, it increases the leverage and the risk. But if the interest rate is really high, the leverage keeps increasing as years goes by. But if you compare buy, borrow, die with buy and box, you can find that because you are selling some stocks tax-free, you are selling them to reduce the leverage, then gradually the box can have a much, much lower leverage compared to buy, borrow, die. So let's use an example to check this. So if you go to this link, and let's look at one example, buy and box. So on the left column, it shows year 1, 2, 3, 4, and until 30 years. Assume you're borrowing something for 30 years. And you own some stock, it grew at an annual gain where it allows you to double every 10 years. So you pay some interest using box, but at the end of the year, you sell some shares so that you generate the same amount of capital gain as your interest. So your number of shares will be reduced down to from 10,000 down to 9,822. And your leverage initially is 20%. Assume you borrowed against your $1 million, you borrowed 200K. So your leverage start at 20%. But the second year, because you sold some of it, the leverage will reduce. And as years goes by, the leverage will become smaller and smaller. And essentially, with such a low leverage, your stock account is very safe. So if we compare buy and box with buy, borrow, die, let's look at this picture. So here, the top 9 rules are buy, borrow, die. So you can borrow against 3% of the borrow against the stock using 3% of the interest. You borrowed 100K and with $1 million. So in the end, after 30 years, so your account grew to 7.7 million. So compared to you sell immediately, pay tax, this is 14.5% better. But it also has a leverage of 4.4% at the end. If you use a buy and box, you sell some shares to reduce the leverage. You're not paying tax. And the value of your stock account at the end of 30 years is 99% of buy, borrow, die. So it's close enough. And more importantly, the leverage is reduced from 4.4% down to 1.3%. So with when the interest is higher, the leverage is higher. And buy and box will reduce the leverage significantly. If you borrow more money, also the leverage is high with buy, borrow, die. But buy and box can also reduce the leverage. So let's go to the extreme, look at the 9%. So assume you're borrowing at 9% interest for 30 years. The leverage would be so high, it's not practical. You don't want to borrow that much money. But if you're using buy and box, your leverage will be reduced down to only 3%. And your performance is much better. The final balance is much better compared to buy, borrow, die. So this is really nice because given the interest rate is so high, you are not taking too much risk. And you still got the money and you paid 0 capital gain tax. Okay. And if there's another method called a box plus dividend. So if you not only use the capital loss to cancel the capital gain, but you also use dividend to pay off some of the debt. So use a dividend to reduce your leverage, then the leverage can be reduced much quicker. So in this sheet, I assume dividend to be 1% per year. The leverage can be reduced down to 0 at year 19. So this is very nice. It gives you a better method, allow you to borrow money, but with very few risk. And also, you don't need to pay any capital gain tax. Okay, that's all for today. Thank you.